Middle Podcast, the podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, slackers, and welcome to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. I am your host, Jason Eck, and this week we're going to get right into it, in part because it's kind of late for me to be starting. So I guess I'll share a little bit. It's just been busy, super busy, work busy, super stressful. I had one of those days where I got into work. I was super stressed about a meeting I was having later in the day. Felt like I had kind of fucked something up, pardon my French. And then it turns out I really hadn't, but like that feeling just stuck with me. Like it was just one of those days. And then, you know, just like stuff with the kids and all that kind of stuff, just busy. It's just super busy. And I'm getting a late start. I had to, cook a little dinner, which is normally not, that big of a deal. Just that I'm a little out of practice with cooking certain meals. So kind of a shout out to my wife who does much of the cooking. And yeah, oh shit, I didn't feed the dog. Oh well, the dog will have to be fed by someone else that's not me. So yeah, I'm starting a little bit late. And then I started doing the research for this podcast, and I ended up going way deeper down a rabbit hole than I thought this was going to be, in part because I didn't think there were that many of this particular type of person in Gen X. And I don't know, I really missed one particular aspect, I guess, of filmmaking. And that's what tonight is about. It's about filmmakers, in particular directors. This is going to have to be a two-part episode because I didn't think about the number of franchises that exist as well as the entire world of animation. Because normally if you go to a Pixar movie, you're not thinking about the director. But then when you have someone who has directed literally some of the most massive blockbusters, you kind of have to go, oh, wait, what? So anyway, that's what this episode is about. I was originally thinking of calling it, What Impact Has Gen X Made on Film? But then I realized it's just Gen X filmmakers. Now I've talked about directors, I've talked about movies, I've talked about franchises. I've even talked about those who are not necessarily Gen X, but created some of the movie memories from our childhood. Everyone from Lucas to Spielberg, etc. But then, like, who are our filmmakers? Who are the people who grew up watching those same movies that we did, and then they become filmmakers? And what's their impact? And I kind of felt like there was a handful that I already knew of going into this list. But then I realized there were so many more that didn't immediately come to mind. So the way this is going to be broken out is basically 60s born Gen X filmmakers. And the next episode I'll do, it might not be next week, it might be in a couple weeks, will be all the 70s born Gen X filmmakers. Because it's a crazy lot. And this is with me filtering out filmmakers who I'm not super familiar with or have never heard of. So for those of you who are big fans of foreign film, some of those directors that you might immediately be thinking of, when I say foreign, I'm a US-based podcast. So anyone who was listening abroad, I apologize. There's like a Norwegian director. I'm like, I don't know any of these movies. A German director. I'm like, I don't know any of these movies. And maybe they're really awesome, and I'm the one missing out. But I really focus on people that I knew of. So much of the list is American and British filmmakers, some Canadian, some French. But yeah, let's jump into it. What is the list? Who are the true filmmakers? And I'm talking typically either going to be big budget, highly critically reviewed, award winners, and sometimes just good old-fashioned popcorn movies, which may or may not have massive. Some of these movies don't necessarily have massive box office, but they're enough to spawn multiple franchises, like entries in a franchise. Okay, this is probably not as smooth of an edit as I'd like, but I just had the first coughing fit of the season, and I have not had any kind of major coughing stuff in months, in part because I was running all the time and getting into great shape, And now with my health issues going on, I haven't been exercising. So I just had to pause and hopefully I'm not wheezing too much, and I'll try to filter that out. Anyway, let's jump into the filmmakers who were born starting back in 1965. And it's quite the list. So, the first one right out of the gate, Rob Zombie. Now, love him or hate him as a filmmaker. So bear in mind, in 1965, there are 19 notable directors. Now, I have whittled down this list, again, eliminating those that I wasn't really familiar with. So here we have Rob Zombie, who, of course, is most known for being a musician. And then he began his foray into horror filmmaking. I think the first thing that he did was House of a Thousand Corpses. I will say it's not everyone's cup of tea. I believe that we sat down to watch it at my parents' house. A number of us sat down to watch it. And by the end, I'm trying to figure if everyone stayed. I feel like some people bailed. Like, we had a bunch of people over. We were watching movies. And I think it ended up just being my stepdad and I at the end, kind of laughing our asses off. If you've ever seen kind of the DVD edition, there's this whole joke section. It might have been at the credits. Absolutely hysterical. But of course, Rob had moved into doing the Halloween movies. He did the whole House of a Thousand Corpses has the Firefly family. Firefly family. They have a whole trilogy. I'll admit, I didn't watch The Devil's Rejects, and I forget what the last one was called. I haven't really watched them. I think his turn at Halloween was met with some derision, but I think it's overall pretty quality. And then most recently, he did his kind of very poorly received critically, his version of The Munsters. I will admit, I found it pretty damn funny. It didn't go anywhere. It was like basically a bunch of like episodes of a show kind of jumbled together. So there wasn't this great narrative, but it was fun. And it was out of character for Rob to do something that was comedic. Do I think the laughs were as strong as it should have been? Probably not. But visually and like capturing the essence of the Munsters, I think he did a great job. So anyway, Rob Zombie. Next, we have the man who makes shit blow up. I guess I didn't think that he was Gen X. For some reason, I thought that this guy was a boomer, and he made things go boom. Michael Bay. I mean, I don't really have almost anything else to say other than you know who he is. Like, he's done everything that explodes. I think the only thing that he did that wasn't let's make things explode was Pain and Gain, which was with The Rock and I believe Mark Wahlberg. But his whole discography is just boom, boom, boom. I think, what did he first get known for? I feel like that might have been, was it The Rock? Bad Boys. Oh my gosh, that's right. He did Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2. Then The Rock, Armageddon, Pearl Harbor, Transformers. Yeah, I mean, he just makes things explode. And people will talk about it as though that's a bad thing. But I really look at it that he makes these big, huge popcorn movies, and they're meant to be enjoyable. I've heard Six Underground, which is available on Netflix, was a lot of fun as well. That's with Ryan Reynolds. Anyway, I don't know. I like stuff that goes boom. I didn't really get too much into the Transformers. I don't know. I saw the first one with Mark Wahlberg. I thought it was okay. But, So next we have Paul W.S. Anderson. Now, I think perhaps his most critically acclaimed, or sometimes I think critically nauseated, like in a good way, is a little movie called Event Horizon. Scary, terrifying, nightmare fuel. But then he became, I think, most well-known for doing the Resident Evil series, of which there are a million. And I think he's either directed all of them, maybe gotten into production with them. But anyway, Paul W.S. Anderson does a lot of stuff. And I think even some of it might have gone direct to video, but it still pays. Let's see, Paul W.S. Anderson. I didn't put links into my notes, which I probably could have done, which would have made this go faster. His second film was Mortal Kombat. Dodgy CGI, let's be honest. But yeah, the Resident Evil. He's best known as the creative voice behind the first 6 live-action films of the Resident Evil series. But he also did some stuff with Alien Predator, Death Race. Yeah, anyway. Next we have Antoine Fuqua. Fuqua? I think it's Fuqua. I think most recently he did The Equalizer with Denzel Washington. Now, I think that he first got started, I think his first film starred Denzel Washington. So let's see. I think I remember that. Oh, yeah. Holy cow. The Replacement Killers. That was his debut movie. That was with Chow Yun-fat. That is the movie that got me talking to my wife before we were dating. No, actually, I started talking to her about Chow Yun-fat movies before we started dating. And then when we did start dating, I went and took her to go see The Replacement Killers because that was like Chow Yun-fat's big Hollywood debut with Mira Sorvino. But yeah, a lot of fun. But Tears of the Sun, King Arthur, Shooter, Olympus Has Fallen, Magnificent Seven, Equalizer trilogy. He's a great director. I enjoy his stuff. I actually really liked the Magnificent Seven remake. Great stuff from Ethan Hawke in that, as always. Denzel Washington's great and everything. Honestly, I think Chris Pratt is as well. So, highly recommended. Next, we have one of the two Wachowskis. So this is Lana Wachowski, who was born in 1965. Later on the list is Lily, born in 1967. The Matrix. I mean, yes, I know Speed Racer was in there, which I'll admit I didn't see. So I can't really judge it. But when you create something like The Matrix, it's almost like anything else is going to be a letdown. But again, I think I mentioned it last couple episodes or a couple episodes ago. I really enjoyed the Matrix reboot here, Matrix 4. I thought it was a lot of fun. So next we have one that might not jump out to everyone. And I didn't realize that his most recent film did big numbers on Netflix with some, again, nostalgic, how do I put this? Attacks from those who might have been nostalgic for the original film. But anyway, Doug Liman directed the original Bourne Identity. That is an awesome movie. And oddly enough, my wife went through a phase over the summer where she has rewatched all the Bourne movies by herself. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that was with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Jumper. Now, Jumper is an interesting one. I haven't watched it in quite some time. But if it's the movie that I think it is, which I think is with Hayden Christensen, right? Yeah, Jumper. Hayden Christensen, Jamie Bell, Rachel Bilson, which I think is married to Hayden Christensen. Correct. They met on the set. Diane Lane, Anna Sophia Robb, who many know from Bridge to Terabithia. Michael Rooker, excellent stuff. And Samuel L. Jackson, like I said. What a great cast. And it's such an interesting concept. So basically a jumper is someone who can kind of like portal jump from place to place. I thought it was actually a lot of fun. And most recently, Doug Liman directed Roadhouse, the remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. Next, we have Sam Mendes. Sam Mendes, also born in 1965. He first came to fame with American Beauty, a critically acclaimed Oscar-winning movie, a big deal for Kevin Spacey. Also, it brought us, oh my gosh, she's in that video, music video for I'm Just a Teenage Dirtbag Baby. What is her name? Mina Savari. Mina Savari. So that was Kevin Spacey, Mina Savari. People look back at the movie, I think, more negatively than when it first came out, was critically acclaimed. And the whole point is it had challenging material. That was the point. So people look back at challenging material and kind of like poo-poo it or whatever. But it was great acting with a very difficult topic. Kevin Spacey is an unsavory character, both in real life, seemingly. We don't know. He's been acquitted of everything. Acquittal doesn't always mean that they're innocent. Just mean that the evidence that was brought forth could not convict. But anyway, Sam Mendes, American Beauty, Road to Perdition, and two of the Bond movies, Skyfall and Spectre. So that's another thing that's interesting is like these big franchises, something like Bond in the 2000s. Of course, it's got to be a Gen X director. The people who grew up with like 1965, he would have been little, but he still would have gotten, let's see, when did Roger Moore become Bond? I want to say 72. I'm just pulling that right out of my rear end. So let's see. Ooh, I think I'm pretty close. Let me just double check here. I said 72. The first one was 1973 with Live and Let Die. Okay. So when 8 years old, maybe would have seen it. So I'm going to assume that Sam Mendes was a Roger Moore Bond guy. And with given how like super serious Daniel Craig's Bond is, it's kind of interesting to me. Anyway, next we have a guy who's also kind of in a similar, I guess, social containment, canceled maybe, as Kevin Spacey. We have Bryan Singer. Now, Bryan Singer's first big movie. It's hard to say it's not a great movie, and probably like outside of like the big franchises that I like, if I'm going to start going through really great movies, you got to put Usual Suspects up there. I mean, that is a damn good movie. Great cast. Gabriel Byrne. Let's see. Benicio del Toro. Stephen Baldwin. I think it's Stephen Baldwin. Oh my gosh. I'm drawing a blank. The other two guys. I said Gabriel Byrne, Benicio del Toro, Stephen Baldwin. Oh my gosh, who's the impressionist? Kevin Pollak. And of course, Kevin Spacey. So Bryan Singer and Kevin Spacey, you see, dicey. But that lineup scene in and of itself is fantastic. And of course, you have the big reveal at the end. If you haven't seen this movie, and it's like 30 years old now, spoiler alert, Kaiser Sose is Verbal Clint. Anyway, great stuff. Totally fantastic. And then moved into all the X-Men movies. So he did X-Men, and that got him the gig to develop a Superman, what he was considering a direct sequel to the original Christopher Reeve series, of course, starring Brandon Routh. Who else is in it? Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I'll be very honest, I don't think I've ever watched the whole thing start to finish. And I'm a huge Superman fan. I don't know, it didn't grab me. It didn't grab me. I think Brandon Routh's excellent. He ended up playing Superman again in the Arrowverse with the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Looks the part, sounds the part. But yeah, I just was not interested in that iteration of Superman. Of course, Bryan Singer then returned back to the X-Men series with the latter entries. You know, pretty good. Pretty good. Next on the list is one I have mentioned before, and I think somewhat underrated in the grand scheme of things, and that's Ben Stiller, whose first movie I think that he directed was Reality Bites, but then he also did a movie like The Cable Guy. He then did stuff like Tropic Thunder, which I think to this day has some of the most, I don't know, there's like a certain, not criticism of it, but it's certainly a film that many say that you can't make today because of the content, because of Robert Downey Jr.'s character. But then like the Secret Life of Walter Mitty, excellent filmmaking. Ben Stiller is an excellent director. And I think that sometimes gets lost. But I highly recommend basically all of the films that he's directed are fantastic. And then finally, one that you may not really know, and I didn't know, and this is where I started to go down the road of saying, because you can't minimize the impact of the Pixar films. So a gentleman by the name of Andrew Stanton, also born in 1965, who directed Bug's Life, which is excellent. One of the best, in my opinion. Bug's Life and Nemo and Finding Dory. So Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Great stuff. Basically, his whole world has been Pixar. So there's not too much more to get into, but I feel it's important because I think those are a couple of the great Pixar movies. Because they really are. It's fantastic stuff. Next, we move to 1966, and there were 18 notable directors. I have this down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the first one, I didn't know the name, because again, top billing is all about the movie stars. So director Frank Coraci, who directed a whole bunch of the Adam Sandler movies, most notably Wedding Singer, which of like the pure comedies might be one of Adam Sandler's best as far as like total storytelling. Wedding Singer is excellent. And I think it started to show a little bit more that there was some range built in there with Adam Sandler that you didn't get with Happy Gilmore, that you didn't get with Billy Madison. That was, I think, the first glimpse. Followed by an over-the-top, also directed by Frank Coraci, character piece in The Waterboy. But notable, Wedding Singer is excellent. Excellent. Your married name's going to be Julia Gulia? Oh, boy. Okay. So I'm going to put these in a little bit different order. I'm going to move this next one down 2. And there's a reason for that. So the next 2 guys on the list have an interesting relationship to filmgoers, particularly filmgoers who are fans of certain franchises or intellectual properties. First on the list is one Zack Snyder. The Snyderverse, of course, as it's known, with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and Justice League. I really do like the Snyder Cut. I do think it's great. I even watched it in black and white. Do I have some fanboy canon feelings about certain things? Of course I do. Of course I do. But it's like people either love the Snyderverse or hate the Snyderverse. I'm like, I enjoyed it for what it is and for the time period and the cast that I got to work with. Great. But I will admit, I'm someone who liked Sucker Punch. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm maybe not the best person to give you a review of Zack Snyder. I enjoyed Watchmen. I think the 300 is fantastic. So I really do like his work. It's just I understand the feelings that people get into, and particularly the criticism about his characterization of Henry Cavill's Superman in Man of Steel. That being aside, I think he's kind of a really good to great filmmaker. His greats are amazing. Like the movie that he did for Netflix, was it Army of the Dead or City of the Dead or whatever it was with Dave Bautista, where they have to go into Las Vegas? Excellent. I really enjoyed it. Interesting kind of play on the zombie story. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. It's great. But then I didn't go in and watch his like Rebel Moon, which is like his Star Wars, like, I don't know. And the next guy, similarly, can get love or hate, but in many ways revived 2 sci-fi franchises that are often considered the competition for one another. And of course, I'm talking about J.J. Abrams, who rebooted Star Trek and also got us restarted in the Disney era of Star Wars. Now, I will tell you that I think The Force Awakens is excellent. Well, it's just kind of a rehash of all the old same tropes from the original Star Wars movie, almost beat for beat. Look, nerd, it was fun and exciting to have Star Wars back again. And if they're going to expand that universe, at least it had energy. Do I love the fact they didn't use extended universe stuff? Personally, yeah. Okay. But J.J. Abrams was brought in to do a job. Now, he came back for Rise of Skywalker, where he had to write a script that essentially was trying to fix the weird Rian Johnson approach to The Last Jedi. I've said it before. The first 3/4 of that film, or even I think they often talk about book films in like thirds, first act, second act, third act. First 2 acts, fantastic. Third act, and then he had to come and try to fix that and kind of shoehorn in all this kind of madness in order to get to some kind of cohesive ending and set up Rey as their future protagonist. But yeah, I mean, J.J. Abrams also did like Cloverfield. Like he's done other stuff I still haven't seen, what is it? Millimeter. Let's see, which millimeter is it? I was going to say 38 millimeter, 30 millimeter. Let's see here. Filmography. Super 8 millimeter. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, the guy's directorial credits are Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek, Super 8, Star Trek Into Darkness, The Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker. I mean, not that many movies that he's directed. He's written a ton of others, or co-written a bunch of others. But, hey, if you're going to only make a handful of films as director, I guess that's kind of a good way to go. So next we have someone who is making a film, or is making films in a particular IP world that is getting favorable feelings by the fandom. And I'm talking about Matt Reeves, who brought us the first Robert Pattinson. What do they call him? Bat Pat? Anyway, his first foray into Batman was very well received. I will admit that when that movie came out, I was still drinking at the time, and I was just drunk and kind of not invested in it. So I need to watch it again in a better mindset. But let's see. Matt Reeves, other credits. Okay, so he worked with J.J. Abrams on Cloverfield. He was the director. Abrams was the writer. He did Let Me In, which I haven't seen. I heard that's an excellent horror movie. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War of the Planet of the Apes, and then The Batman. So his overall filmography is, Cloverfield, Let Me In. Oh, Mother Andrew. No, he was a writer on that. The Batman. Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty good little filmography for Matt Reeves, and he's currently in production on the next Batman film. And I think he was also a co-writer on the Penguin series on Max. So again, here's another one where I've seen the movies and the guy's name did not ring a bell. Because again, some of these are, like two of them I can think of being about either the franchise universe or the top billed actor. So Scott Derrickson, also 1966, directed The Black Phone, another one of these latter career Ethan Hawke movies that's just so much fun. And it's interesting because I was expecting it to be a little bit scarier than it was, but it just had the right emotional impact. Because to me, I really like stories that if they're horror, that there is some emotional resonance to it. That's why slashers are not as exciting to me. You've got to have some meat on the bone emotionally. And The Black Phone certainly delivered. He also directed Sinister and also the first Doctor Strange. So it's interesting. Doctor Strange is a good fit for horror film directors, which is why I think Sam Raimi did such a nice job on the Multiverse of Madness. And then the next three guys, just holy shit. James Gunn. James Gunn has only done like 6 movies total. I think it's like 6 movies total, but the ones that he's done are all freaking great. One of them I haven't seen, and I keep meaning to. So James Gunn, 1966. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 films under his belt. Slither, which is a horror movie. I think this is Ben Affleck. Is that Ben Affleck? Nathan Fillion. I'm sorry. Nathan Fillion, Elizabeth Banks, Michael Rooker. His first working with Michael Rooker. So then Super, which is a black comedy starring Rainn Wilson. Then you have Guardians 1, Guardians of the Galaxy, that is, Guardians 2, The Suicide Squad, rescuing that IP. I liked the first Suicide Squad, but The Suicide Squad took it to a whole nother level. And then begat the Peacemaker series, and also kind of fits in with, James Gunn's new DC Studios. Guardians 3, and of course the upcoming 2025. I hope I don't die prematurely. I got to see James Gunn's Superman. And then doing all the development on all the stuff that's going on for the DCU. And he was also the principal writer on the Scooby-Doo series of movies, the live-action movies, Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, and so on. He was the writer on those. And he only wrote Brightburn. I thought he directed it as well, which is kind of a evil Superman trope movie. But nevertheless, I'd still like to see it. The next guy on the list, I don't think he's done anything else. And let me check it before I say it. Because to me, he is most well known for one franchise. But I could be wrong. So let me double check before I say it. It's basically as I thought. Did he ever do anything else? Not really. Jeff Tremaine. Jeff Tremaine of Jackass fame. When you go through his filmography, like his early stuff is like, literally the titles are shit, boob, crap. Actually went shit number 2, boob, crap. Direct to video. Then Jackass. Don't try this at home. Steve-O Video. CKY4, Latest and Greatest. Steve-O, The Early Years. Jackass number 2. Jackass 2.5, and so on and so on. Basically, a lot of Jackass. But he also did, I think, a documentary about Evel Knievel and stuff like that. But Jeff Tremaine, I mean, those movies have grossed a ton of money. So you can't just dismiss it out of hand. And they're somewhat iconic and pretty indicative of our stupid generation. Let's be honest. Those Jackass guys, that's us. I mean, seriously. I can remember being out in the front lawn of one of my buddy's house, and he has these big, huge hedges. And we definitely flipped each other and ourselves into these things, jumping off of balconies. I jumped off a balcony at a hotel. Yeah. Anyway, this was our generation. Oh, you jump in the shopping cart? Yeah. I just never thought to film it and become a multimillionaire. So this next guy fascinates me because he started out doing indie films. No, all these folks in some way or another start off on a very rudimentary level. Sometimes it's they just start taking jobs on sets. They do a student film and then like their second unit director, like those kind of things. And they're learning their craft. But then this next guy ends up going from making smaller movies to some of the absolute biggest budget movies that you can possibly imagine, which is a long way from a little movie called Swingers. So Swingers, that was 1996. Oh, directed by Doug Liman, who I mentioned earlier. Stars, it actually, he didn't direct it, he wrote it. So Jon Favreau wrote Swingers, Liman directed it, and of course starring Vince Vaughn. So when did he start directing? Like how do you jump from one to the other? So filmmaking credits. Made. Oh, that also stars Favreau, Vince Vaughn, Peter Falk, and Sean Combs. Uh-oh. You guys seen the news? Federal indictment for one Sean P. Diddy Combs. And that indictment is not looking good. Racketeering, prostitution, blackmail, human trafficking. Whew. Hey, Jon Favreau, might want to distance yourself from Diddy if you haven't already. But that's where he jumped in. And then within, let's see, a couple of years. So Elf, Zathura. Check out Zathura. It's Jumanji in space. It's great. Dak Shepard is in it. It's great. It's great. I love it. And then Iron Man. And then it's just all big budget stuff. And executive producing a lot of the Marvel stuff. Doing a lot of the development for like the TV series. Doing stuff with Star Wars. Doing live action of some of the Disney movies. Most notably The Jungle Book. Yeah, dude. Jon Favreau, he definitely made a name for himself. So, good for him. Next, we have 1967. There were 15 originally on the list. A lot of them were directors. I was, looking up their names, looking up their filmography, and they just really weren't clicking with me. So this is a nice, tidy list. So I already mentioned Lily Wachowski earlier for The Matrix, Speed Racer, etc. So the other two that we have from 1967, I'm going to try to pronounce this right. Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. It's French. You may have heard of him. He directed Dune, Dune 2. What else did he do? Blade Runner 2049. Like, I don't know. I really like his stuff. I really, really dug the Dune movies. My family was less enthusiastic. I know I've mentioned that on the podcast before. I'm sitting there, Dune 2, IMAX. I am giddy at the beauty that was on the screen. I know that they were less enthusiastic about the story or the pacing. I thought it was breathtaking. I thought it moved at a great pace. I really enjoyed it. But he is like the director's director right now. I think people are looking at him going, you can be artistic and still make these big, huge blockbusters. And I just think that's really cool. And then next on the list, we have Judd Apatow. I mean, it's just comedy after comedy after comedy after comedy. And hey, be careful. This is the kind of comedy that's going to get you canceled kind of thing. And I think he's somewhat done that recently, kind of gone on the, hey, I apologize. I wouldn't necessarily make those movies today. And I think that's kind of bullshit because it's like, you just got to own it. But 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Funny People, This Is 40, Trainwreck, King of Staten Island. I mean, his stuff is funny. And some of it just laugh out loud funny. And I think that's somewhat rare sometimes for like comedies that are so predicated on like trying to elicit true laughter. I think you have to have the right, obvious, comedic actors. I think when you work with someone like Steve Carell, who is just naturally got that timing down, who's also remarkably good in dramatic roles, but I digress. So yeah, 1967, Judd Apatow. So next we have 1968. I'm looking at the time here. I'm not sure I can get through all these. 1968 is killing it for directors. I mean, only second. No, it's more than 1965. Holy cow. Yeah, I'm going to have to get through these. So, John Singleton. I think we all first heard about him in his first film, Boys in the Hood. Starring role for one Ice Cube that launched his career. Great song and like soundtrack. Excellent stuff. There were 18 on the list, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like 15 of them hold up, or like 14 of them hold up that I knew of. Okay. But he also did a Too Fast, Too Furious. He did Four Brothers. That was with Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, solid director. But I remember Boys in the Hood being a huge thing for us. And that was what, 90? That might have been 92. Was it 91 or 92? Boys. It keeps trying to autocorrect this for me. And I'm like, hey, knock it off. Yeah, 1991. Yeah, I remember watching that and being like, wow, this is really powerful. So props to Doughboy. Next, we have David Ayer. So I mentioned earlier, Suicide Squad. Not The Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad. Kind of a star turn for Margot Robbie as one Harley Quinn. Will Smith as Deadshot. That was one of those things where people were a little bit pissy about it because, I'm using this term as people use it, race swapping, because was it Floyd? What was Floyd? I know I'm being so nerdy, but I had the Deadshot one-off limited series that was dark. Oh my gosh. That was a really, really dark comic book. Floyd Lawton. But yeah, I mean, great cast. Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. Just, it was great. I really enjoyed it, but it was not as, it was kind of dour, and really the only comedic elements were Harley Quinn. Everyone else seemed too serious. There wasn't enough moments of levity, and it got a little muddy in there. But he also came out of the gate with Training Day. So again, I mentioned Ethan Hawke, who kind of a career renaissance after Training Day, if I'm being honest. And I think you can only get better when your foil is Denzel Washington. But what a great movie to come out of the gate with. Next, we have one that, you might not realize it, and then you go, oh, yeah, holy shit. Adam McKay. Like all the Will Ferrell movies, Step Brothers and Talladega Nights, all of it. That's him. And like a lot of these guys, you do all these comedies, and then you get a Marvel franchise. So he got Ant-Man and Wasp. So good for you, Adam McKay. Next, this is a guy who it looks like he's a co-director with someone else that will be on the list later on. This is Chris Williams, who did the Pixar movies Bolt and Big Hero 6. Next one I got to take a minute with, and because it's one of my all-time favorite movies, is in this guy's filmography, and it's based on an earlier film that he had done in Mexico. Talk about Robert Rodriguez. Desperado is an excellent movie. Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek. It's excellent. The third part of that series was Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Excellent. With Johnny Depp, cuckoo crazy. And of course, Antonio Banderas reprising his role as the mariachi. But I mean, this guy's whole filmography is like crazy good, including like all the Spy Kids stuff. Like there's a certain sensibility to it that you just have to really enjoy, as well as From Dusk Till Dawn, which he directed. Excellent director. He's done some stuff in the Marvel DC. No, excuse me. In the Marvel Disney is what I was trying to say. In that world, including, I think, the Book of Boba Fett and maybe some Mandalorian. Let me double check it. Robert Rodriguez. Let's see. Yeah, Desperado, Mariachi, Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Oh, that's right. He co-directed Sin City. I really like Sin City's aesthetic. I know Frank Miller was part of the directing of the second one, and it's not as good. Planet Terror, along with, Tarantino and that whole like fake movie trailers and all that, as well as the Grindhouse thing. Machete, which is a standalone kind of spin-off from Spy Kids with Uncle Machete. That's a weird whole thing. We Can Be Heroes, The Faculty. Oh, The Faculty. Horror movie. Remember that one? And Alita, Battle Angel. I haven't watched that. I think I'll need to do that. So anyway, Robert Rodriguez. Next, we have Sean Levy, Cheaper by the Dozen. That's how he starts. His most recent film, 30 years later or whatever, just had like $1 billion run at the box office and is still in theaters with Deadpool and Wolverine. Go look at his filmography. It's crazy. You start off doing like this nice family comedy, and then you're selling billions of tickets for a major, major release. So, Sean Levy, you have done it. And a bunch of stuff in there that he's done with Ryan Reynolds. Next, we have a guy that I thought was going to be huge, and that's MCG. Did those first two Charlie's Angels movies, Terminator Salvation, which some people have said is actually really good. That's kind of an opinion thing. Honestly, I haven't watched it. I think that's the one with Christian Bale, and I normally like Bale stuff. I think that's the one where Bale was all over the internet screaming at like a lighting rigger or whatever. Next, we have Jonathan Goldstein. He directed the Horrible Bosses stuff. So again, these comedy guys who start off with these, smaller budget films, and the next thing you know, you're doing Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, I can't discount it. I know this isn't the same thing as the next film by Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese presents or Steven Spielberg. But I think the directors are so important. I mean, how often is it that a great movie, great script just gets destroyed by poor direction? It happens all the time. But if you have a at least competent director, great script, great cast, man, it's amazing. Next guy, also, it's really going to depend upon your own sensibilities. I call him, I want to make sure I don't mislabel him. You'll know what I mean by this, and it's part because I have family that would be offended. I wanted to make sure I said he was British, because if he was from Ireland, not Northern Ireland, Ireland, it would be inappropriate for me to call him a Brit. But he's in fact a Brit. So Britain's Quentin Tarantino, Guy Ritchie. This guy was married to Madonna, which still blows my mind. For 8 years, he was married to Madonna. But Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels. I mean, awesome. And I have to tell you, Snatch is so good. Like, not only was it one of those things where people are like, oh, Brad Pitt can act. It's like, well, yeah, 12 Monkeys and Snatch. You just go, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, that really kicked off Jason Statham's career big time. He was in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels as well, but it was that Turkish role that I really think sent him into the stratosphere. What are you doing with those guns, Tommy? What are you worried about? The Nazis? Anywho, next. Oh, this could send me down a rabbit hole. I'm going to come back to this guy in just a minute. Next one, we have Pete Docter. You never would have known his name, I don't think, unless you were really interested in the Pixar stuff. He's the chief creative officer for Pixar. He also directed Up. Up is amazing filmmaking in any genre. It truly is. It's so good. Inside Out, I went and saw that with my kids. And it was the first time we were leaving a movie. And my kids are like, wow, Dad, that movie made me want to cry. Just out of emotion. I was like, holy shit, these little humans, they do have feelings. And Soul, which was pretty good, honestly. I really enjoyed Soul. Next, we have Christopher McQuarrie. Again, one of those that if you're not into film, you might not know his name. Like, he did like all like the Mission Impossible franchise movies. Like a lot of Tom Cruise stuff. Like, that's one of Tom Cruise's go-to directors, including, I think, either he was a co-producer or writer or maybe director on Top Gun Maverick. But yeah, that's what he's most well known for. And again, in the Pixar universe, we have Byron Howard, who directed Tangled, Zootopia, and Encanto. Encanto, probably Disney's last truly great film, at least recently. So going back to the other director that I had mentioned. So Chad Stahelski, or Stahelski, yeah, Stahelski. He has directed the John Wick series. And he's been attached to a franchise that is from a novel series. And I haven't talked about it on the show. I might have a couple of times, maybe early on, because I was really displeased with how the series ended. But Chad Stahelski has also been attached to the Sandman Slim movie. He has the movie licensure through one of the companies, but I don't think he's attached anymore, which is kind of a bummer because honestly, I was really stoked for him to have been attached to it as a director. But apart from the John Wick films, he just got attached to something. That I was like, oh, that's going to be pretty good. So he was Keanu Reeves' stunt double, by the way, on the Matrix movies. And then John Wick 2, 3, John Wick 4. That's all he has directed as lead director, just the John Wick movies. But I mean, just the confidence to film that first John Wick movie and the ambition of the fight scenes. Now, mind you, he's a fight choreographer and a stuntman by trade. But that's a completely different thing than directing movies. But he was second unit director going back to 2009. So, yeah, he was second unit for a Guy Ritchie film, second unit on The Expendables. Oh, then all these directors that he's working with. M. Night Shyamalan, the Russo brothers. He was second unit for Captain America Civil War. Yeah, I mean, excellent. And it looks as though he still does stunt work. Well, son of a gun. That's so interesting. Yeah, he's listed here. Deadpool and Wolverine stunt work. No shit. I mean, you just got to appreciate the hell out of it. But anyway, I believe he's no longer attached to Sandman Slim. If you want to read like the first 10 novels of that series, excellent. Then it goes in a direction that I just was like, ugh, okay, bummer. So now, 1969. There are 22 notable directors from 1969. And I have this down to 13. So about 5 minutes left before we get to an hour. Let's see. Darren Aronofsky, Black Swan, Requiem for a Dream, The Wrestler. Excellent director. Requiem for a Dream is actually a horror movie, and I've mentioned before, I have not seen it. Like, haven't seen it. I'm kind of avoiding it. Seems bonkers. Next, we have Brett Ratner, who I think is most well known for the Rush Hour series. Rush Hour is fantastic. I don't care what you say. Excellent. Excellent. And then he had a shot at X-Men with Last Stand. I don't know why Bryan Singer wasn't there for it, but it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't great, and it didn't live up to the other movies, but it is what it is. Next, we have David Dobkin. I wouldn't have known his name. The guy directed Wedding Crashers. I mean, are you serious? Awesome. And Shanghai Nights. So again, also Owen Wilson, but great stuff. F. Gary Gray. Didn't know his name. I know his movies. The Original Friday, Ice Cube, Chris Tucker. Damn. Did a Fast and Furious movie. The Italian Job. Be Cool. I mean, nice little run of different types of movies. So, yeah, F. Gary Gray, 1969. David Wayne. He's a guy who works with Paul Rudd a lot. Wet Hot American Summer. Role Models. Wanderlust. Pretty cool. Tyler Perry. I have never seen a Medea movie. It's probably not for me, but who knows? It could be super enjoyable. I don't know. I did see his live kind of special, hybrid special that was for Easter. It was a passion play that's had an all-star cast. If you haven't seen it, if you are Christian affiliated at all, I highly recommend it. Great performers in there. Chris Daughtry does an excellent job in that. Seal as Pontius Pilate is excellent. I think Trisha Yearwood, anyway, check it out. Tyler Perry. It's called Tyler Perry's Passion New Orleans. Excellent. Check it out. Next, we have Trey Parker. Trey Parker, of course, from South Park. But he also, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, did direct their classic. Hold on. It's going to try and fix my spelling, and I don't appreciate that because I know what I'm trying to spell. Did he not direct it? Yeah. Basketball. He did direct that, 1998. South Park. Terra Firma, don't watch it. Team America, World Police. Underrated gem. Absolutely brilliant. Puppetry, vulgarity, anything you want. Wait a minute. No. I want just direction. It doesn't really break out his filmography here. Film. He did not direct Basketball. He did direct World Police. Anyway, next we have Spike Jonze, who I think was really shot up into the consciousness when he directed a little video by a band called Weezer. And that was for Buddy Holly, where he was cutting the band into Happy Days. Now, he seems like kind of a weird guy, if I'm being perfectly honest. But his filmography demonstrates that. He directed Being John Malkovich. I saw that in the movie theater. I don't know what I was thinking. That's a weirdo movie. Adaptation with Nicolas Cage. Where the Wild Things Are. Weird, man. Weird stuff. Kids did not dig it. And then Her. That's right. That is with Joaquin Phoenix, Amy Adams, Rooney Mara, Olivia Wilde, and Chris Pratt. Anyway, Spike Jonze. Mark Forster, one that also I think kind of falls under the radar if you're not like, again, a movie geek, right? Monsters Ball is how he came right out of the gate with Charlize Theron. No, wait, that's Monster. Monsters Ball is the one with Halle Berry and Billy Bob Thornton. Sorry. That's the one he did. The Kite Runner, World War Z, and honestly, a great movie. Again, went under the radar, but I pretty much like just about everything Ewan McGregor is in. Christopher Robin. It was excellent. Chris Weitz did Ants, American Pie, but then goes Oscar award season for About a Boy with Hilary Swank, and then comes off of doing a Oscar-nominated film to one of the Twilight movies. Hey, you take the work where you can get it. You can put me into anything. I'll happily go ahead and give it a shot. So I'm going to go back to a couple that are on the list that I didn't mention already. Bong Joon-ho, Snowpiercer. You had me at Snowpiercer. That is also clearly at the hands of someone who's Gen X. Like, honestly, the aesthetic, how it's filmed, like all of it is excellent. And I want to say that was based upon was it a manga? Snowpiercer. I'm singing that slightly with the Bond theme there. Snowpiercer is based on the French climate fiction graphic novel La Transperneige. Sorry, I don't speak French. But the screenplay was written by Bong Joon-ho and Kelly Masterson. He did the original story outline, etc. I love that movie. I love it. It's absolutely bonkers. I started to watch the first 2 seasons of the series. I think I'm just going to go back and watch the whole thing because I think they're wrapping it up with season 4 or 5. And then he did Parasite, which my oldest said to me is amazing, is absolutely amazing. He's like, you haven't seen Parasite? I'm like, no, I haven't. He's like, it's crazy good. So I think that won the Oscar that year, which is one of the first, I think, foreign language films to win the Oscar. Anyway, Bong Joon-ho. And finally, 1969, one of my all-time favorite directors, Wes Anderson. I don't think there's anything I haven't liked. I'm not sure there's anything I haven't seen. So just very quickly, we'll go through his filmography before we wrap it up for the night. So, I didn't see Bottle Rocket. That's his first one with the Wilson brothers, Owen and Luke. Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. The Darjeeling Limited, I really liked that one. Weird, but I loved it. Fantastic Mr. Fox, Moonrise Kingdom, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Isle of Dogs. I haven't seen Isle of Dogs. That's an animated film. The French Dispatch, Asteroid City. And what is this? What is this? This is on Netflix. Is this animated? An American fantasy anthology film written, directed, and co-produced by Wes Anderson based on 4 short stories by Roald Dahl. I was unaware of this. Why did you not suggest this to me, Netflix? And upcoming, he has The Phoenician Scheme, directed by Wes Anderson from a script he wrote with Roman Coppola. The film will feature an ensemble cast including Benicio del Toro, Michael Cera, Bill Murray, Riz Ahmed, Tom Hanks, Benedict Cumberbatch, Scarlett Johansson, Charlotte Gainsborough, Rupert Friend, Willem Dafoe, Bryan Cranston, Mina Threepleton, Mohammed Shahori, Imad Mardinli, Antonio Arango. Holy cow. Yeah, I don't know what it is that I love about his filmmaking. I really don't. You know, we watched a couple of them with our kids and they were kind of like, what? What did we just watch? Asteroid City, they did not enjoy. They did not enjoy it. There were a couple of moments here and there they did. It was definitely one of his weirder movies. I'll be honest. It doesn't have the same narrative structure as some of his stuff, but yeah, I really enjoy Wes Anderson stuff. So that is part 1 of what will be a 2-part series, and we'll get back to part 2 somewhere down the line. Probably not next episode, but soon. But these are some of the great filmmakers of our generation that have made significant impacts on the box office behind the camera. And I think that's really cool because I see how so many of these movies, I'm just like, yeah, these are just like right up my alley, including the animated ones, because the ones that resonate more with me, like Big Hero 6, that was excellent. Absolutely excellent. That was not Pixar. I'm sorry. That was it? That was like a different branch. That was like a Big Hero 6. Not that you need to know, or anyone does, but I need to know. Big Hero 6. It's just considered Walt Disney Animation Studio. Just plain and simple, Walt Disney Animation Studio, not Pixar. Anyway, great stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's such a killer list, though, when you look at it. And I just look at it. Wow, Rob Zombie. Oh, Michael Bay. Wachowskis. Bryan Singer. Ben Stiller. Zack Snyder. J.J. Abrams. Like, James Gunn. It's really a tremendously talented group of directors. And admittedly, I did focus on the kind of content and movies that I've either seen or familiar with, or a certain major blockbuster. But I'm sure there are some of the people that were on the list that I removed or excluded that did some great indie work that some people go, oh, well, I saw this little film at this little tiny, 100-seat theater that's all indie films, and it's so great, and like it hasn't really made a name for himself yet. I don't know, but you just look at the list, and these are a lot of really talented directors coming out of our generation who would have been heavily influenced, like I said, by the Spielbergs and the Lucases and the Scorseses and the Coppolas. Yeah, we got such a big blender of movies growing up, and these great directors, Lawrence Kasdan. Yeah, pretty amazing. And it's just good to see so many of people from our generation, of our era, of our sensibility, our senses of humor, our ideas about what is compelling. I mean, some of these obviously fell flat here or there, but I look at a lot of these and go, yep, when I watched that was my sense of humor, and I laughed out loud. Or a lot of the black comedy stuff that's definitely of our particular brand of humor, I think is excellent. So, hey, who did I miss? Is there some indie filmmaker that was born in the 60s that you're like, hey, you missed this person? Or, hey, you mentioned so-and-so, but do you realize that they directed X, Y, and Z? Let me know. And how do you let me know? You email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can find me on Instagram, X, and YouTube at StuckPodX. Head on over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast. Please like, comment, share, leave 5-star reviews, and most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.